Once upon a time, there was a woman who had no children. She once went to a good witch for help. The woman said she was dreaming of a child. The sorceress gave her a seed and ordered to plant it in a flower pot. The woman was very happy, thanked the old woman, and went home. At home, she planted a seed, watered it, and began to wait patiently. Soon a large wonderful flower, like a tulip, grew in the pot. When its petals opened, there was a tiny girl inside. She was very small, no more than an inch. Therefore, the woman called her Thumbelina. One night, when Thumbelina was fast asleep, a huge toad climbed onto the window of the house, wet and ugly. She grabbed the sleeping girl and hurried to her swamp. The toad decided to marry her ugly son to the beautiful Thumbelina. She planted her in the middle of the river on a wide lily leaf so that the girl would not run away. In the morning, Thumbelina woke up, and realized that she was not at home, but there was water around her. When the girl realized what a terrible fate awaited her, she wept bitterly. At this moment, small fish swam past. They felt sorry for Thumbelina. They gnawed at the stem of the lily, and the leaf floated with the flow with the girl. A large beetle flew past. Seeing a beautiful girl, he grabbed her and carried her to a tree, where he introduced her to his friends. They all envied her beauty, but said that Thumbelina was very ugly and could not be in their company. Under pressure from acquaintances, the beetle also decided that she was ugly, lowered the girl to the ground and said goodbye. All summer Thumbelina lived alone in the forest. She made a cradle for herself from grass and leaves. She ate on pollen and dew, basked in the sun in clear weather, and hid from the rain under a large leaf of burdock. But soon cold rains and winds came. Thumbelina did not have a winter outfit, and she began to freeze. The girl suffered from hunger and cold. And one day she was sheltered by a field mouse. Hey! They lived together gloriously. The girl helped the mouse with the housework, told her fairy tales, and in return received warm housing and food. The field mouse had a neighbor, a wealthy blind mole, who did this by counting his wealth all the time. Even being blind, the mole realized that Thumbelina was very cute and offered to marry her. But the girl was not at all happy about this. She did not like the boring mole. Once, walking along the underground passages, Thumbelina saw a wounded swallow, which almost died of the cold.
Oh no!
All winter she took care of the sick bird and by the spring she cured her. Before the wedding, Thumbelina asked the mouse to let her go upstairs to admire the sun at last. When she climbed out of the mouse hole, she saw a swallow, which she cured. Thumbelina complained to the bird that she was being forced to marry a nasty mole and live with him deep underground. The swallow invited the girl to fly with her to warm lands, and she agreed. She quickly said goodbye to the mouse, climbed onto the swallow, and they flew away. Once in a wonderful country, Thumbelina saw a huge meadow with beautiful flowers. She chose the most beautiful flower for herself to live in. Suddenly, she saw in the flower the same little man as she, only with wings. It was the king of the elves. And an elf lived in every flower. The beautiful elf has never seen a girl as small as himself, and even so beautiful. He immediately fell in love with Thumbelina, and invited her to become his wife, the queen of the elves and the queen of flowers. After all her adventures, the girl was happy to hear such an offer from the charming prince. She happily agreed. The elf took Thumbelina by the hand, and at the same moment 2 wings appeared behind her. Now she has become the queen of the elves. And since then they have lived happily ever after.
A long time ago, in a small kingdom, there lived a king who loved to dress up more than anything else. He could spend whole days in the dressing room, showing off in front of the mirror in new dresses.
Nice.
So, for every occasion of life, whether it be a trip to the theater or just breakfast, the king had prepared the best fabrics and robes. And then one day 2 swindlers arrived in the kingdom. On the streets of the capital, they heard about a king who loves to dress up. And then a cunning plan ripened in the heads of the deceivers. They decided to pass themselves off as weavers capable of making a wonderful fabric, better than which nothing could be imagined. And so that the king would definitely pay attention to them, the scammers spread a rumor that their fabric had magical properties. It is completely invisible to those who are impenetrably stupid. When the monarch heard about the incredible weavers who appeared in his kingdom, he was very happy. After all, at last he had the opportunity to understand which of the royal advisors and subjects is stupid. The next day, the king summoned the weavers, showered them with gold and ordered him to sew the best dress from magic fabrics and gold threads. Then the deceivers took all the valuable materials, took the gold and set to work. They sat down at the empty royal machines and began to pretend that they were sewing a magic dress for the king. The rumor about the outlandish fabric spread throughout the kingdom, and everyone wanted to see it. The king himself was no exception. He really wanted to take a look at the dress, but he was afraid that he would be stupid and simply would not see the fabric. And so the monarch decided to send his wisest advisor to them, the most intelligent and honest among all.
Oh yeah!
When the old advisor came to the workshop, he saw how the deceivers were working behind empty machines. They lifted up a non-existent dress, straightened invisible folds, and extolled fake designs. Then the counselor, frightened that he would seem a fool, pretended to see the dress too. Returning to the kingdom, the old man did not find the strength to admit that he had not seen anything. Therefore, he reported to the king that the fabric was magnificent. The minister followed the advisor to the weavers. He looked at the empty machines in the same way, and was afraid that he was actually stupid and unworthy of his place.
Oh no!
So the minister went back to the king and praised the fabric even more than the counselor did.
Nice!
Finally, the king decided to admire the curiosity himself, until it was removed from the machine. He came to the weavers with a whole retinue of courtiers. But neither the monarch nor the advisors saw the dress.
Nice!
However, each of them began to admire the outfit, imagining that everyone else was actually seeing the fabric. Satisfied with the result, the king awarded the cunning Knight's Cross and granted them the title of court weavers. And then the day came when you could put on a new outfit. The rogue weavers volunteered to assemble the king themselves. They dressed the ruler in non-existent trousers, then a camisole, and an invisible kaftan. And all the nobility who watched the process only said how beautiful the costume was, and how it went to the king. Finally the monarch went out into the street. The subjects had already gathered around, hoping to see the magnificent attire of the king. However, none of those who came did not admit that they saw nothing. When suddenly a little boy appeared from the crowd and exclaimed that the king was naked. The crowd picked up these words, and everyone around began to laugh at the ruler. The monarch realized that he had been deceived, but continued his march, as befits a king. And his retinue still supported the mantle, which in fact did not exist.